Right, 02890 333 105. What about the spotlight on electric vehicles now, and see where we are in relation to the appetite for transferring to an electric mode of transport? Is it something that you've considered? I've certainly given it plenty of consideration, but I've decided indeed to stick with the car that I have. Now, I want to speak to Mark McCall, who's from the Electric Vehicle Association, NI. Mark, good morning.
Good morning, Frank.
Mark, I'm trying to think of the reasons. I haven't got them here written in front of me, why I decided against an electric vehicle. I did go and look at a couple. The main one, without doubt, was the charging facilities and the lack of them in Northern Ireland. Secondly, it crossed my mind, what happens in a park hut? How do we get charged? What about if I'm driving to, say, Donegal, where I like to go? Where am I going to get a refill along the way? And it keeps coming back to the infrastructure. I quite like the cars. I'm very, very, very impressed by the actual cars.
Do you have off-street parking, Frank?
I do have off-street parking, yeah, and I'm very lucky to have all the room to park the car. That's not a bother.
Yeah. The DFI tells us that 8 out of 10 homes in Northern Ireland do have off-street parking. So, for most of us, most of our charging is done at home. But you're right to raise the infrastructure question, because whenever you're on the move, you do need to consider that. The bad news is that Northern Ireland still is the worst part of these islands on infrastructure. The good news is that the last 2.5 years have seen a massive change in that. So we've gone from rapid chargers, which are those sort of super fast ones that take minutes to charge that you need while en route. We've gone from 21 of those in July 2022 to 164 today. So that's nearly 700% growth in around 2.5 years. So certainly massive changes here.
Yeah, I noticed that there's a new Lidl in West Belfast, and I was at it the other morning, and they had a parking bay for electric charging. Now, I never looked at it because I don't have an electric car, but I was just wondering, that crossed my mind, how long would I have to sit in that bay to charge my car? This is brand new parking parking facility, brand new charger. Would that most likely be a short stay? Could I fill it as quickly as I'd fill diesel, or would I have to sit there for 20 minutes, half an hour?
Well, if you can charge at home, all you're really doing is charging enough to get you home. So, we give a presentation to the Infrastructure Committee at Stormont late last year, and one of our fellow directors there, who does a commute from Omagh to Belfast, 20,000 miles a year, I think he said that he'd charged twice in the last month, and on both occasions it was for less than 10 minutes, just enough to get you home. So, people think you're sitting there for hours, but that's really not the case. Certainly, there are destination chargers where you may want to take a cheaper option and a longer option. Perhaps you're staying at a hotel overnight, for example. But the rapids and these ultra-rapid chargers that we're seeing installed here now really are incredibly fast.
And what are the chances of getting them to be as common as filling stations?
Well, I don't think you need them to be as common as filling stations, because most of us have our filling station at home. So, when you take the number of charge points at people's houses, then that makes it not an apples to apples comparison. If you can charge at home, then you're potentially leaving every morning with a full fuel tank, in air quotes. So you really don't need to see the same amount of chargers. That said, I think we've passed 70,000 public chargers for the whole of the UK now. So it's growing well, and we're certainly on track to meet the government's targets.
But there's little point if you live, say, on the Ormeau Road, or if you live in somewhere in Belfast that has townhouses and you park on the street. There's little hope of you being able to have an electric vehicle.
It's a good question, and certainly one that's forming a core part of our strategy. We're almost 3 years now since we had a meeting with DFI and one of these cross-pavement charging solutions. So DFI are working hard on that now, and looks like they're coming possibly to be able to offer some sort of an answer within the existing VIRA, as they talk about, within the existing regulations, giving a terrace house owner the chance to cross the pavement with a charging cable in a safe gully that would allow them to charge off their domestic rate at home and take advantage of those cheaper prices.
And what about if we are successful and we all manage to get electric cars, and we're all charging at night. Will the grid handle it?
It will, yes, and people like National Grid and GB have said that it will handle it. And in fact, EVs will form an important part of the grid going forward, because you mentioned the power cut there earlier on. Some of our members were running their homes from their EV during the power cut. So EVs represent an awful lot of stored energy. And that helps us balance the grid, reduce demand at certain times when the wind's low, increase demand when the wind's high, and the EV certainly is going to be crucial in our new energy network going forward.
What's your personal interest in it, Mark? Do you sell them, or are you promoting electric vehicles, or are you just an environmentalist?
None of the above, I would say, Frank. In fact, I would say that I was sceptical at the start, like many are today. When the Nissan Leaf came out, I sniggered, who's going to drive that? And surely that's just moving the emissions from the tailpipe to the power station. But then I educated myself, and there really is nothing around that makes more sense than, especially in this country where we've got such a fantastic wind resource. We're going to be able to drive around on this wind energy. We're going to be able to heat our homes on this wind energy as well. So, there's climate change aspects here as well, but there's also energy security. We're not going to have to be giving billions of pounds away every year to foreign entities to buy oil. We're going to be cleaning up our air in our urban towns and cities as well. So it just seems like a total no-brainer.
They are very expensive, however. Should the government not be encouraging us to purchase an electric car by making them cheaper than it is to buy a standard car?
Yeah, cars are expensive, I would say. I just had a look this morning, and a new VW Polo, small Polo, is now over 21,000 new. So cars are expensive. You can buy a new EV now for about 15,000, the Dacia Spring. And again, I had a look this morning, and with £1,500 down, it's £169 a month. That's for a brand new EV. Used car prices, EVs are now on parity with petrol and diesels, and of course they've got much lower running and maintenance costs as well. So yes, there has been a barrier there in cost, but that's coming down all the time. Yeah,
just on the cost of running it, is it much cheaper if you're putting your home electric into it every night, if you're driving significant miles? Is it much cheaper than the petrol or the diesel?
It's massively cheaper. For 10,000 miles, you're talking about maybe £300 to £400 a year for 10,000 miles on an EV. Petrol or diesel is around maybe £1,200 to £1,500 for the same mileage. So yeah, it's maybe a third or quarter of the price of a petrol or diesel. So especially if you're a driver like the one I mentioned earlier, is doing 20,000 miles a year, quite often the car is almost free in some cases because the savings are so big on the fuel.
And the home charger, does that come as part of the deal when you buy the car, or do you have to purchase a home charger and get NIE to put it in for you?
Yeah, some new cars come with a home charger as part of the deal. If you're buying used, you're going to have to look after yourself normally. But there are plenty of companies around Northern Ireland installing chargers now. What sort of charger you need and its price depends on things like perhaps you have a solar system that you want to integrate with that, so you can charge off your solar power, or if you want a more basic charger, then they're cheaper.
And the other point that is forever thrown when we discuss this, the recycling of the batteries. Are the batteries quite a heavy unit? What's the future of the actual battery?
Yeah, it's a good question again, and I think there isn't a lot of battery recycling going on simply because there aren't a lot of batteries to recycle, because they're all still in the cars. Yes, you'll hear horror stories of something that's failed, and there'll be 1 in 10,000 that does, just the way there is with an automatic gearbox or something else in a fuel car. But generally, I'm driving a 12-year-old EV on the original battery, so you hear a lot of nonsense about the batteries need replaced every 3 years or every 5 years. It's just not the case. But when they do come to be removed from the car, about 95% of the minerals can be recovered. So unlike petrol or diesel, when we're mining today, burning once and mining again tomorrow, the batteries can be recycled and reused. Yeah, I'm just looking at the text because all of them, not all of them, but the vast majority of them are negative, because you're making a very stout and articulate presentation
in relation to electric vehicles and convincing me, because I'm on the threshold. I've my next vehicle. I've got to make the choice. But it's a very learned delivery that you're presenting to people who aren't convinced. There's so many people rowing against it. They just don't believe that there'll be enough charging points, or that they'll be able to get electric at the right price if everyone goes electric, or get the batteries. They get the batteries recycled. It's just one gurn after another. I shouldn't say gurn. It's one negative comment after another from the people listening to this program.
Yeah, we would say that quite a lot of the debate on EVs is people who don't own EVs telling EV owners what it's like to own an EV. And there's so much disinformation and misinformation out there, so many myths and so much nonsense, that we have a huge piece to do around education on this. But I would give you this stat. Every year we do a survey, and last September, EV drivers in Northern Ireland, 83.5% said they will likely or definitely buy another EV. 2.6% said definitely no. So that's people who are driving them and owning them. That is their opinion. And most surveys, if you look at ZapMap or any of the other surveys, they're all the same consistently. 8 or 9 out of 10 people who drive an EV will never go back.
And just one final question: how much is a replacement battery? Colleen's asking.
Yeah, so that varies a lot, but you don't have to replace the battery. If you do a search on Google for Hevra, you'll find that there are now garages around Northern Ireland, like Crossies in Lisburn, for example, who will open up the battery, and instead of replacing the whole battery, they have the capability of dropping the battery out and replacing just the cells that have gone faulty. So instead of the nonsense around tens of thousands, it's maybe a few hundred to repair a battery. Certainly that gave me confidence when I was buying this 12-year-old Leaf, that if anything happened to me, I would be able to repair it.
Yeah, you're very convincing, Mark. It's good to hear a voice like yours, because most of the voices I hear are dissenting, but you're speaking from experience, and I'm quite sure the electric vehicle sellers will be delighted that you're not a seller, you're just a customer, but that you're more than happy, because it is very positive. It's very positive what you actually are saying with regard to the electric vehicles. I don't think I've time for any more on this at this particular moment in time, but I'm wavering. I just can't decide what is the best thing to do. I'll take one final one here from Jared. He says they're very quiet, the cars. They're very silent, and people who are partially sighted sometimes can't hear them go past. There's a validity in that, isn't there? Can they not put a rattly thing in the wheel or something?
Most of them do make a noise at a low speed now, and I would say this isn't a new thing. If you look at something like the Toyota Prius, it's been around for more than 20 years and starts off on electric power, so we haven't really seen a huge amount of issues here. But yes, there are certain aspects of that we need to look at, and I think legislation for the car manufacturer will make sure that's dealt with.
Okay, Mark, very informative. Thank you very much indeed. Great to hear you on the programme. Thanks for coming on. Thank you.
Thanks, Frank.
That's Mark McCall. He's in the Electric Vehicle Association NI. And, most of the voices you hear on this show are convincing us, including my own, not to go EV. But listening to a very happy customer, it makes me, consider maybe being drawn towards the old showroom once more.